Welcome back. I am John P. Today we're going to be answering questions that you've asked me on my Instagram, The Real John P. From time to time, I post a story there where you can type in different questions that you have about myself, the watch industry, certain watches, maybe even Delray Watch, delraywatch.com, where we buy, sell, and trade watches. We get in so many different watches, and there's always so many questions. So I like to direct people's questions to these things that I do so that we can share the answers with everyone, because oftentimes there's a lot of overlap and people are wondering the same things. We're going to be talking about whether or not certain Rolex models are hovering at the retail price, whether certain things are going to be holding value, losing value. We're going to be talking about market updates, particular watches. So if you did ask a question, it's very likely that it is included in this video. So without further ado, the first question that I was asked is, will a Rolex two-tone sub hold value if bought at retail? Currently, the two-tone Rolex Submariner is trading wholesale at about that the retail range within the the 14 to 16,000, or even a little bit less depending where in the world. In other factors, whether or not it comes with a box. Sometimes the watches, when they trade hands, especially across the world, maybe it doesn't have the box. So in that range, we're hovering around the retail price for a two-tone sub. Over time, only time will tell whether or not it goes down or up. But I think, certainly for now, if you're not looking to lose a lot, then it's not a bad option if you do like the watch. But I always recommend when you buy a watch, make sure that you like it, because these days of flipping and doubling your money are pretty much over, with the exception of maybe a couple of choice Patek Philippe models and the Rolex Daytona. The next question this is about Chopard, and I really like what Chopard has been doing recently, but this is, what is your opinion on Chopard entry-level watches? I imagine they're probably talking about the models such as the XPS, and I think that if you are looking for a watch that's a little more casual, but still has that dressability factor to it, the XPS is pretty cool. They have different dial combinations. They've had different collaborations with some fashion companies as well. And I think if you're looking for something different and you can get a discount, 20, 30%, maybe if you hunt around, then I think the entry-level Chopard watches go a long way. But of course, you need to like the style. But there's nothing bad that I can say about them. Today, a lot of luxury watches, especially the entry level, regardless of the price point, are kind of offering you a lot of the same, at least utility or actual functional value. So the choice is yours. Nothing negative to say. Next question is, when will we stop hating Hublot? They are pioneers in their own right, and they have unique materials. Yes, that's true. They are pioneers, and I really want to credit them with making rubber straps so popular. That was Hublot's thing, is they were the large watch with rubber straps. And I remember, they would have this kind of vanilla smell. I know there's going to be guys out there that would remember when the rubber straps, the Chopard Mia Mia, also smelled like vanilla, but this was like a thing. I haven't smelled this on the straps in a while, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but watch collectors would like that rubber smell. And I think Hublot, there are some great things to be said about the early watches, and even today, but I think the major complaint is you can just get so much more bang for your buck, so much more horological value, and it really just comes down to the branding. And a lot of watch collectors want more than just the branding. Not always, but a lot of them do, and that's where I see the hate. So I don't know that it's like deserved hate, just so much as people maybe bringing awareness to there's better options out there, and maybe not just going about it in the best way possible. Next question, which brands are you excited for at Watches and Wonders this year? Interestingly enough, I'll say that these trade shows are just not that important anymore. Sure, there's going to be brands that are going to release interesting things, but I think what we see is with the internet and with the way content is created and just machining and manufacturing being a lot quicker and better than ever before, there is really not these need for these trade shows as much as there used to be. And we're seeing brands release watches all throughout the year, coming out with surprise releases and test releases. And I don't put as much weight into these trade shows as we used to see, with the watch days or the Basel World and things like that of, kind of yesteryear. So I'm excited to see what brands come out with this upcoming year and into the future, because I think brands need to be more interesting, especially in this highly competitive market with a lot of micro brands and a lot of quick and nimble brands like Grand Seiko that'll just pop out new dials on watches, every couple of months. So I'm just interested in seeing where brands go in terms of offering unique and interesting things to captivate collectors. I don't care too much about these trade shows, honestly. The next question is, what do you think about gold Speedmasters? I think it's kind of interesting. I like the white gold, current or recent release within the last couple of years, the white gold Speedmaster on the bracelet. I think it's kind of an under the radar stealth watch. It will look like just a Speedmaster Professional in stainless steel, but when you see it up close and you put it on, it's much heavier, and it's kind of cool in that own regard. Now, if we're talking about something like a Sedna or more of like a yellow gold, like a noticeable yellow gold Speedmaster, gold is not that interesting for me, and specifically in the Speedmaster, I like to see it in as close to that moon watch kind of configuration as possible. But if you're looking for a gold watch and you don't want to get a gold Daytona, maybe you're not a Rolex person, I don't think there's anything negative that you can say about the Omega Speedmaster Professional in gold, just so long as you're looking for a gold watch that about fits the requirements, right? Like, what bad thing could I say about an Omega Speedmaster just because they put it in gold? Cool, I probably wouldn't wear it, but I can see kind of the place it would serve in a collection. Next question is, how does it feel to be God's favorite? I don't know what this means, but I think we're all favorites in the eyes of God. Next question is, what is your skincare routine? We're really grabbing here for some questions. I don't have a skincare routine. I lay in the pool, I go in the steam room, and I really don't drink alcohol, so I think that might contribute. But I don't know if they're telling me, hey, you have great skin, you have bad skin, but that's my routine. Either way, take it, for what it's worth, if that's the question you were asking. Or if you were wondering out there, my skincare routine, which is basically nothing. The next question is the Omega CK859 sector dial. What do you think about this watch? I like this watch a ton. We've had this at Del Rey Watch, and I think it's great. I like sector dials, and I like that this comes from a historical model in Omega's catalog, and I like what Omega does with their museum collection pieces. That being said, personally, I don't think this is a $7,000 watch. I also saw some of these listed a while ago for like $9,000 US. I don't think that just makes sense. Omega, to me, is filling the role currently of like a bang for buck brand that still has a lot of history and heritage. And so I don't think that the price makes sense. If I were going out there to buy a sector dial watch, I'd probably get into the JLC sector dials. I think that you can kind of hunt and find one. But that being said, if you're Omega collector, Omega fan, you like that it resembles a historical model. This is a really nice watch. I like the way it fit on the wrist. And of course, the specs are nothing less than you'd expect from Omega today. Next question. What do you think about the Gerald Genta buy retros in terms of value? I like Gerald Genta a lot. I have a Gerald Genta currently in my collection. Of course, he designed, so many of these notable watch styles. Think the Patek Philippe's, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. He is credited for doing so many great things, but he also had his own brand over the years. Starting with the Gerald Genta, and then there was like a Gerald Charles. After it was sold off, he kind of still made some watches there, and now the family kind of licensed out the name, and they're making some watches under one of those names as well today. Whole different brand, whole different story. But that being said, I think Gerald Genta is going to be, if we're talking about Gerald Genta proper watches, I think they're going to be increasingly collectible over time, especially as the other models that he designed just become probably even more desirable. He becomes more notable, and more people get into watch collecting. So I do see, limited quantity, which if people want them, they're going to have to pay the market price. More collectors, it just, follows that in terms of collectible value, it's going to be there. And how can you go wrong with retrograde complications? Pops back to the number it started, depending on which exact retro complication. I think it's cool, quirky, has history, and that's generally where value comes in watches. Next question is, will the Black Bay 58 bracelet be unwearable with age? So I think they're talking about the Black Bay 58 bronze here. Well, interestingly enough, people have been tracking this online. There's some videos and there's some Instagram posts about a year, and there's a little bit of oxidation or aging on the Black Bay bronze But that being said, Tudor has talked about how there's a little bit of aluminum or some other metal in the alloy that's supposed to stop it from aging so quickly and rapidly. You had, Panerai, like the Panerai Bronzo, and some of the micro brands that created these, these bronze watches or, copper or brass kind of mixture alloys of watches that can be aged very quickly because they didn't, think about it at the time, or maybe that was the style. But that being said, Rolex, including Tudor, which is, in the same family of brands, they really like to control the products in the way that they are handled into the future. So I don't see these turning into kind of one of those dirty green watches I think people have also tried. And after a year, there's a little bit of oxidation. So, it seems like even gold watches from 30 years ago from other brands would age a lot more substantially than what we're seeing with the Tudor Black Bay 58. And just keep it in mind, it's like, hey, maybe in a number of years, 10 years, depending where you live in the world, the climate, exposure to different things, maybe the watch is going to look older, right? If you wanted that look to stay forever, maybe get something in gold. That being said, something to consider, but I wouldn't say, a week from now it's going to be, dark brown and tarnished. Like, that's not how this particular watch works. The next question is, what inspires you the most about watches in 2023? I kind of touched on that just before, but I think brands just have to be more creative today. I think they have to break the mold. They have to do interesting things to get the attention of collectors. And you see brands looking to companies like Grand Seiko that, really invested in collectors, like with the Grand Seiko Club and these different events where they kind of incorporate certain people and content creators. I think brands just have to do that if they get stuck in the old world mentality. They're going to be selling watches to the old world mentality people, and that's changing. I see it with all the people we get to work with at Delray Watch. People want to buy a nice watch. They want a good value. They want the quality, and they want something that's going to stand the test of time and maybe have some notoriety, and they want the brand to actually care. So I'm excited to see what brands are going to do, and it should follow that if the brands do care, they will just come out with what people want. So that's probably what I'm the most excited about. Next question. Why are there a lot of modern Rolex watches circulating without papers? A whole number of reasons, but believe it or not, especially, if a person's just not a collector, they really sometimes don't care, especially before, watches had such a large following as they do today. All these channels and the blogs and things like that. People would just buy a nice watch. They'd take the box and papers, they'd throw it in the drawer, they'd forget about it oftentimes, right? It's just not something they thought about. They worked with an authorized dealer, and the authorized dealer maybe knew that person because they bought their wife's engagement ring, or they bought, a bracelet for their daughter or something like that. And so they had kind of that family relationship in a way. Of course, it depends on so many other factors. But that being said, surprisingly, I think people are surprised when they hear that many people don't really care about the box of papers. They throw it in the drawer, they forget about it. The watch breaks, then they kind of think, oh, hey, maybe this is something. But otherwise, that's kind of what's happening. People wear the watch. That's just what happens. Also, when watches kind of trade hands between countries, sometimes these things get lost in the mix, or people don't want to put the paper necessarily with the watch because, they think maybe it's going to be tied to them. And that's changed over the course of time and depending on the brand as well. But specifically with Rolex, people buy a Rolex, they want to wear it. And the box of papers you can't wear. Next question. Would you rather have a $10,000 modern steel watch or a $10,000 older gold watch? It depends on the watch. Personally, I don't wear a ton of yellow gold. I think it is kind of flashy. And here in South Florida, the Palm Beach area, that's it's kind of a market where people kind of want to do flash things, and that's just really not for me. And as time goes on and things change, I really like wearing under the radar type watches, and I also like to be able to wear a watch where I can kind of go in any setting, right? Like currently today, I'm wearing an Omega Seamaster Aquaterra Good Planet in titanium on a canvas strap. I could wear this with more of my lifestyle. I can jump in the pool. I can, literally do anything with it, and it would work. If I put a gold watch on the wrist, okay, it probably has leather. And then if it's on a bracelet, okay, now I'm wearing a solid gold watch. I'm making a statement kind of a thing. And I don't want to make any statements. I don't want to walk into a Starbucks or a coffee shop and, have this gold watch. And I know many people are saying, oh, nobody notices, but in different places of the world, people do notice, and I'm not looking to set any kind of tone out there of look at my gold watch kind of a thing. Maybe if I like the look a little bit more, I'd consider it. But for me, I'm not that interested in that. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comments below on this one. The next question is, would you rather have a current gen Rolex Explorer Polar or one of the older ones? Probably the older ones. You know, the new one is just too large of a size for me personally. I think, of course, the quality is going to be higher and it's going to be made to modern spec and it's going to have newer movements and all of that, which is great. But for me, just my wrist size, the older ones work better, right? I didn't have the Polar, but I wore the 16550, which was this transitional model in the Explorer line that was produced for a very short period of time. And they had different variations of that, including the Polar actually turned cream in some of the examples and is highly coveted today. But I had the black dial, and there's just something about that screams more classic historical Rolex when they were true tool sport watches only and not necessarily a luxury item. Today, there's a lot more consideration of the luxury aspect of it. And I like the tool nature of the watch, like I just described, like how I like to go anywhere and do anything with watches oftentimes, especially living in Florida. So for me, that one I think makes a lot more sense, but really it comes down to the size, right? I'm not looking to wear like I would consider it a large watch for a 6.5-inch wrist. Next question, what is the market update currently? I would say I'm seeing prices kind of level off, right? There doesn't seem to be any large scale dumping anymore. Collectors that wanted to dump, maybe they were speculating, have kind of done so, or they're waiting for something. We do receive a lot of emails of people that say, hey, here's my whole collection, what will you pay? We don't really go down that rabbit hole of pricing collections because oftentimes it's a free pricing. That being said, we're working with collectors every day that do want to sell their watches, and there is a bit of a leveling off on these more desirable pieces. The demand is not picking up yet, but there is still some demand of people that want to buy the watches at lower prices than they were selling for a couple years ago. So it's a bit complicated. I think there's maybe some testing going on here in the market of, is it going to go down? Is it going to go up? But it's kind of, wobbling in this plateaued area. And I think it could stay there. Just based on the feeling, what we see from collectors, what we hear from collectors, we see from other dealers, what they're doing. I think it could kind of stay where we're at today for who knows, maybe a year, but only time will tell. There's a lot of economic factors, world factors, international things that are going on. We all know things are going on in the world. So that's out of our control. It's out of Rolex's control. But keep in mind, Rolex is making more watches every day. They need to make money. And that is a consideration, right? If demand doesn't go up, they keep producing watches. It should follow that prices could go down or people buy them at retail and wear them like they did just a handful of years ago. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions, comments below. Now, what do I think about the Girard-Perregaux Laureato or the Master Calendar Triple Date? So the JLC, the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Cal Triple Date, would I rather have that or the Girard-Perregaux Laureato? There's different versions of these, different references, right? The triple calendar. This has been produced for so long by JLC, right? Decades at this point. And the Laureato, they've had different variations over time from the 8010, which is the, kind of the original Laureato, all the way up until today, where you have these composite materials, more Hublot-esque, more, LVMH style, Girard-Perregaux Laureatos, like the modern renditions of these as well. So, I think if we're talking about just current day, standard Laureato, maybe let's say 42 size, or the current day Master Cal from JLC. Totally different watches. I think you probably need both. One sport, one dressier watch. I am really caught on the fence because if you've probably been watching this channel, you probably know I've owned both of these over time. But I might lean in the Laureato's direction today just because of the versatility of the watch. I'd probably get it in the 38mm copper dial because I like that they brought that size back out. More traditional in a sport watch, which I think is rare to see today. And the last question for you Grand Seiko guys is, what is my favorite Grand Seiko? I don't have a favorite Grand Seiko, but I do want to share with you that if you haven't seen these, Grand Seiko has produced some China-only market Grand Seiko watches over the last handful of years, and the dials are just so unique. The thing with Grand Seiko is oftentimes they will produce a dial for the US market only, and then they might produce like kind of a similar dial for something in Europe. It'll be very close, but maybe it's in a different watch, right? And what's interesting is they have these Grand Seiko watches for the China market that are just different. There'll be a picture here. There's a a handful of references, but I think they did something different for the Chinese market, and you don't see it a lot. The websites that talk about it are all Chinese websites. It's with Chinese, language, so there's not a high probability that someone in Europe or the US, unless they speak Chinese, are going to see them because everything, all the literature is in Chinese. They're sold in China only, and it's on the China only website for Grand Seiko. So all of this just kind of compartmentalizes it out there. Picture here, I think if you're a Grand Seiko fan, it's a really cool kind of thing to look at those and just see, this very particular type of watch that they're selling really in just one place in the world. But guys, what do you think about all this stuff we just talked about? Do you have anything that you'd like to share? Please leave that in the comments below. Also, if you go to my Instagram, The Real John P, in the future, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to send me a DM if you'd like, but typically it's always best to wait for one of these things to pop up so that I can make sure to put it in the video so that we can share it with you all out there and talk about it in the comments below. Guys, please also do not forget to check out delraywatch.com. We just doubled our inventory. We're looking at probably doing that in the next couple of months as well, just a bit of an expansion period here. And we're very excited to be there, to have you all along for the ride. It's been a blast so far, and we're looking forward to continuing out another great year. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.